pretty much our Little League sent a team 3 years in a row from our Little League to the World Series, cleaning through all those tournaments and eventually going there, playing teams around the world. Played Spain, Australia, Curacao. So a lot of really cool opportunities to play countries from around the world in the World Series. And so I was on a team the team that went the second year and the third year. So I went 2 years in a row to the World Series after winning state and regional.
Over 2020, it was kind of funny because, you know, that was right early on, like when TikTok came out, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone was starting to like get on the TikTok hype train. But at the time, it was before like people really took it seriously. You know, it was the dancing app, as I like to call it. But I had posted a video, I think in January 2020, that was actually my like decision video of like where I was going to go to school. So it was like me deciding between all the schools that I applied to, and they were all out of state. And ultimately, I decided to choose. I chose UT. Yeah. And the video got 800,000 views. I woke up with a couple thousand followers, and then from then on, you know, I would eventually, like, you start to realize that like once you get that first viral video, the second one comes way easier, and then you start to like realize that it's like, okay, like how these algorithms and like how these social media platforms like really work. It's almost like a game.
You could take tests to get certified in Microsoft and Adobe products. Okay. And so I did a bunch of certifications for a bunch of them. But when it came to Excel, my score was the top score in Virginia, 100% accuracy, and was the fastest out of anybody that had scored that. Qualified for a competition that Microsoft and Certiport put on. They try to crown the best user from ages 13 to 22, so high school and college, the best user of Excel. That's awesome. A lot of times when I was there, I was just there for the experience, but you know, ended up winning the competition for the U.S. First American in 16 years.
He eventually changed it to the School of Hard Knocks, which was, again, like the finance entrepreneur media channel that we started running. And this was before any of the interviews. But eventually, we had begun doing interviews with people, and we noticed that those started to do really well. And, you know, we were interviewing people all over downtown Austin. We started to grow like pretty substantially and had some really cool people reach out to us, real estate brokerages, you know, people that work pretty high up in tech startups and all these different like companies and different industries. And eventually, you know, we just were growing and growing. We've grown the channel so far now to about 700,000 followers on TikTok, over 150,000 on Facebook, 100,000 on Instagram. And so
what does elementary school in South Korea, the Little League World Series, a global Microsoft Excel champion, and starting a business amassing nearly 1 million followers in just under a year have in common? Those are all parts of our UT brothers stories today, Jack and James, who have accomplished all of that in just about 20 years of life. If you're enjoying Austin stories just like these, be sure to like and subscribe so we can share more of them with you. And here's today's conversation.
Well, I think let's start with y'all's childhood, because I think you have a set of unique experiences, have been all over the place, not just all over the country, but all over the world. So I don't know who wants to, you know, start, James or Jack, but.
Yeah, so both my brother and I, we've, at the ages of 20 and 22 years old, we've had some incredible opportunities to travel all over the world. I myself have been to 20 countries, and I believe he's been to like 22 or 23, something like that. We also had the very unique experience of being able to live overseas in South Korea for 4 years. So we lived on 3 different military bases in South Korea, where, you know, we had the opportunity to go to countries like Australia, China, you know, North and South Korea, Cambodia, Japan, all over. And so we've grown up traveling. It's just always remained one of our biggest passions. And we've seen, you know, from Europe throughout the Caribbean and the Virgin Islands, all throughout, you know, the United States, Australia, everywhere. So
yeah, that's wild. Plenty of people watching this have lived in one city like their whole life. And you guys more in that short span. What's like the longest place that you guys stayed at one time growing up?
One time, so when we lived in Korea, we lived in the city of Daegu for 1 year. And then we lived in a city called Pyeongtaek for 2 years, which the military base was called Camp Humphreys. Okay. It's the largest military base overseas, largest installation, and then we lived in the capital, South Korea, for Seoul for 1 year. Wow. So it's probably the longest that we stayed in like a place outside of the U.S. for the longest period of time. But for vacations and stuff, like going to different countries and just seeing the world is probably for like a week at a time. And
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
But and then just to answer, so that was the longest where we stayed overseas. But as far as like actually living in one spot. We had lived right outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia for about 10 years prior to, and then eventually we came out to Austin.
Cool, very cool. And so what was your dad's specific position he held that was the reason you guys were traveling?
So our dad, he retired as a colonel in the Army, but in the military, he had the opportunity to be a garrison commander of a couple military bases in South Korea. So in particular, Camp Humphreys, the one that he had brought up, it's the largest overseas military base or military installation in the entire world. So he was in charge of probably like 30 or 40,000 troops over there, and controlled all the operations of the bases. The installation was a part of major deals for the military. He was General Sharp's XO, who was a massive general, and he had a lot to do with the Secretary of State in Defense and Foreign Policy. So just that opportunity and his fundamental leadership. At a young age, we were exposed to him speaking to groups of tens of thousands of people, not just people that were on base, but also people just living in South Korea. And so, being exposed to that early on, it gave us such a unique perspective, to see him from that point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think that maybe differentiated y'all's upbringing a little bit? Like, do you think, was it very regimented? Was it very disciplined? Like, what was kind of instilled in you guys?
So I think being able to like see him just at a young age being able to get on a stage and talk to people was the first thing. It kind of helped us realize how important public speaking skills are, and just being able to command a crowd and be a leader pretty much. And just having, seeing the recognition that he got being the head of an entire military base wherever he went. We even had classmates in our classes, even in elementary school, would come up and talk to us about like, hey, like, obviously their parents are a soldier too because they're on the base, and just be like, hey, your dad's doing a great job, stuff like that. And just seeing that recognition just inspires us to like, hey, we want to be good leaders too, and stuff like that.
Wow. No, that's so cool. That's cool. How would you like summarize, or like what are maybe a highlight, going to elementary school in South Korea? That's not something very many people have experienced. So what,
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just say, like, for me, for example, like, because you're living in South Korea, you're going to school on a military base, they still want you to, be accustomed to the culture since you're living in that country. So, we were we had to learn Korean. So essentially, like, a couple times a week, like, we were taking Korean classes, and this was at an early age. So both of us relatively became pretty fluent in, like, speaking Korean. And so, I would just add, being exposed to, like, that culture, you tend to learn a lot, and you tend to start viewing things. And that's one of the biggest things that I've gotten out of, like, living in a foreign country, but also growing up traveling, going to so many different places. You tend to view things from a much more global perspective, as opposed to a very narrow lens where it's like, okay, some people, they don't have the opportunity to like go out of their state, or like they don't want to, but it's like, it really does change you and like really opened up a lot of opportunities and given us a lot of great perspective.
I still have like, I call it kind of like the most interesting weird skill that I have probably is that I can read Korean writing, but for most of the time I can't, like, I don't know what the majority of it says. I just know the alphabet and stuff like that. So
oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I can go to a Korean restaurant, I know what's on the menu because I could read it. If I went to Korea, I could get around because I could read the signs and know what cities there are. But when it comes to like just us having a conversation, it's very basic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. So I think you guys said that the longest stretch you were in one place was in DC. So just at least from your perspective, how would you say DC is now different from where you live in Austin, Texas?
Essentially, my brother and I, when we got back from South Korea, we lived right outside of Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia for about 10 years. And the best way that I could describe D.C. is it's a very cool city in itself. It's completely different from Austin. D.C. is very centered around a lot of government jobs. It's centered around a lot of contracting. But my brother and I, especially because he got really into entrepreneurship, especially when he got into college, that's when we kind of realized that it's like our best shot at being like an entrepreneur in DC is starting like a home interior design company or starting a construction company. Like, any thoughts of kind of like what we were trying to do, DC just didn't really make sense. Whereas Austin, we found it's an incredibly collaborative city.
Yeah.
And there's just so many opportunities. People are always looking to, help one another, see where they can provide value for each other. And for us, we've found so much benefit from that, and it's helped us so much.
Yeah.
I would just say that, growing up in DC was awesome, just being able to be so close to the nation's capital. Like, growing up in that area just gives you a lot of cool perspective just on the history of the country, and just opens up a lot of neat opportunities there, but not really the ones that we were so focused on. I think there it's like, a lot of the people where we came from, Northern Virginia in our area, a lot of them are focused on that structured, six-figure job, which is great. But for us in wanting to pursue entrepreneurship, not exactly the greatest hub to go to, which, obviously Austin, Texas, booming city right now in the country. That's why when we wanted to come here.
No. And just knowing a little bit of y'all's story, so I think one of the events or like one of the moments that launched you perhaps like into entrepreneurship is a fascinating story that I want to get to. There's also a baseball connection to this story as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
not to confuse people for a second, but let's go to baseball because I think I'll set up where I want to go next. When did you guys start playing baseball? When did you get into that? How young were you?
We grew up playing baseball, so in South Korea actually.
So you're playing it internationally.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
We grew up playing multiple sports, so baseball, soccer, and basketball. But then ultimately, like I don't remember who it was, but I feel like we decided we're just gonna like settle with one sport and stick with it. We love all sports.
It was when we came back to the U.S.
When we came back to the U.S. is when we ultimately made that decision. Like, baseball is like the sport that we were the most passionate about that time. So all the way up through high school, like we played baseball at a pretty competitive level. And so
our little league was called DTQ. It stands for Dumfries Triangle Quantico, which is like the little tri-city area in Northern Virginia that we're from.
Okay.
And pretty much the little league sent you have to go from districts, then you play state, and then you play region, which is like all the states. So we're in the Southeast region, so we play Florida, Georgia, all those.
Yeah.
And then the team that wins that goes to the World Series.
Okay.
And pretty much our little league sent a team 3 years in a row from our little league to the World Series, cleaning through all those tournaments and eventually going there, playing teams around the world. Played Spain, Australia, Curacao. So a lot of really cool opportunities to play countries from around the world in the World Series. And so I was on a team the team that went the second year and the third year. So I went 2 years in a row to the World Series after winning state and regional. And so we've just always been fascinated with the game of baseball, have loved it to death. I miss playing it. So
yeah. And so somewhere along this journey, trips to the Little League World Series and so on, you have this parallel Excel interest, Microsoft Excel, into examining the game a little bit, right? When did you become kind of like a student of the game or try to analyze the game at a high level?
Yeah, I would say probably when I was in middle school, I pretty much was super fascinated with analytics. That's when I started playing a lot more competitively, like you said. And so when I'd be watching games on TV or playing, MLB The Show, the game, like I'd see all these stats and I'd get really interested in it. And so just being curious, would take stats to Microsoft Excel, play around with it, do some, try to learn the program, doing some analytics to play with baseball stats. And every school project I did, up until I graduated high school, most of them were all centered around baseball and analytics and stuff like that.
Wow,
so.
Yeah. And do you think you just have like a natural curiosity? Like I'm a baseball guy. My dad played college baseball. I love the sport. I've never gone to the level you have to be like, hey, I'm going to go examine at this depth. So you just think you're naturally curious? Is like a side passion of yours? Like how did you go about?
I just think sports statistics are interesting.
Yeah.
I love Moneyball.
Yes.
One of the iconic
That's
baseball
what came to mind
books
when you were
and
telling me
movies.
that. Like 100%. Yeah. That's amazing.
Love that story. Inspiring to me, and just like we would spend hours. We'd come home and we after practice, and instead of just watching something, we'd turn on MLB Network and we would watch just like hours. We'd go to sleep at night and have quick pitch on the TV, which was like the highlights of the games from.
Right. 100%. No, that makes sense. So you take learnings from that, and now we fast forward to, it was called the World Microsoft Excel Championship. Is that what it would be the title?
Yeah.
That I didn't know existed until you guys shared it with me. I'm like, this is amazing.
And the funny thing is too, I didn't even know it existed when I was qualifying for it.
Okay.
So pretty much just, us both being ambitious, wanting to, pad in our resume and our transcript, just make it as strong as possible.
Yeah.
One of the things that my high school offered was you could take tests to get certified in Microsoft and Adobe products.
Okay.
And so I did a bunch of certifications for a bunch of them. But when it came to Excel, my score was the top score in Virginia, 100% accuracy, and was the fastest out of anybody that had scored that.
Wow.
And so pretty much my teacher came to me and was just like, hey, you qualified for a competition that Microsoft and Certiport put on. They try to crown the best user from ages 13 to 22, so high school and college, the best user of Excel, the best, who's the top user in the country and then eventually the world at this program. So I had no idea what it was, but it eventually led me to those competitions.
Okay. And you guys are saying 2 million people, is that right? participating in this?
Yeah, so overall, 2 million people across the world had competed and tried to get certified in the program to qualify for the competition, where out of 320,000 U.S. competitors, they took the top 100. We went down to Orlando, Florida, and pretty much did the competition. To greater expound on what the competition actually is, basically it's kind of like you have under an hour to solve a consulting problem where they give you don't know anything about it beforehand. You're just sitting there and there's a manila envelope in front of you, and they're like, all right, go. And you have you have 50 minutes to pretty much, you open it up, you read the packet, and you have a computer in front of you, and you have to transfer in like 10,000 rows of data, sift through them, and solve this consulting problem for a company. And what they do is they have this software that checks not only your intuition when solving the problem, but what tools and how well you solved it, and eventually come up with a score for you if you solved the problem correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you won this, like first place, right?
Yeah. So won the national competition. Pretty much, my score was 100%. The only one with 100% accuracy.
Okay.
Did it in 30 minutes, and then going on to the world competition where they took the top everybody that won the national competition.
Yeah.
Out of 54 countries, brought them to LA, and
54 countries. That's
pretty
amazing.
Pretty
yeah.
much the same. Much the same thing. Same competition. Ended up placing first in there. It's funny. A funny story I like to tell with it is that the baseball connection just circles around, because when I was there, I missed like half of the opening ceremonies to go to a Dodgers game. So it's just rolled. I was like, all right, I'm in LA. My favorite team's the Dodgers. I have to go see them, and so that to me was such a priority. And
That's awesome.
A lot of times when I was there, I was just there for the experience, but ended up winning the competition for the U.S. First American in 16 years. So.
That's amazing. And you guys are saying that like there are like teams that prepare for this like over years, right? In other countries.
Yeah, that's a real thing. I was telling people that he played baseball at a competitive level. He was very gifted in school. He had a great social life as well. But the thing about him is that it was like once or twice a week, like he'd study for like an hour, like knowing that, okay, like I got to go to the world competition in the next month. And a lot of these other countries, people from China, people from India, Japan, that were like competing at this world competition, it's like well regarded and like noted that some of these kids, they spend hours for years prepping for this competition, because it's been around for like at the time 17 years or something, like there's 16 or 17 years, and so he first in the entire world. So
for China, if someone from China wins the competition, streamline top university, and you get like preferred housing somewhere or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's so impressive. It's just like an unbelievable story. There's so many cool pieces to it. And then from there, you're saying that started to open a lot of doors, right? Because you said now a whole bunch of people reach out to you, wanting you to consult with them or solve projects. What kind of next steps happen after?
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. And so I was 17 at the time when I won.
Yeah.
But pretty much it makes news that, hey, here's a young kid that is the #1 user of Excel.
Yeah.
And basically people would contact Certiport, or they'd contact me. At the time, I didn't realize what a cool business opportunities it was. But eventually, once I turned 18, I tried to get smarter on business and dealing with projects and things like that. So started an LLC and tried to look at different projects that were coming my way. And that's what kind of like led me to try to get more involved in entrepreneurship. And he was there right behind me, just like trying to seeing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And eventually that led me to Texas, because I was applying to schools, and UT was one of my top on the radar.
Yeah.
So.
What led you to ultimately choose? I know some of it you're saying was the environment, how different from DC and so on, but what was the kind of deciding factor to be like, UT is where I want to go?
Yeah, for sure. So my mom's family's from Texas.
Okay.
And so I had family that had gone here. My room back home in DC had burnt orange painted on the wall pretty much.
Yep.
And so I was, really, really just, it was kind of staring me in the face the whole time. Applied to a bunch of different places, but the best opportunity that I had for me was to come to UT. And be a Longhorn. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And what about similar reasons for you? Is it helpful that he was already there? Or?
I mean, the biggest impact was definitely him being down here.
Right.
We've always been like extremely close. That's kind of the thing is, growing up, we were moving around so much. We always had each other, like no matter where we went.
Didn't have our own rooms growing up.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was like we shared a room.
Yeah.
And so, but ultimately, for me at least, I really weighed the options, like what I I wasn't 100% sure like what I wanted to do. For a really long time for me, I wanted to kind of pursue the military route and go special ops, and in particular go to the United States Military Academy at West Point, which is where my dad went. But then seeing, my brother coming out to Austin, had some incredible opportunities. And the first time I came to visit him in Austin was when I made in my mind, I was like, I can't see myself anywhere else. Like, I've got the utmost respect for, the men and women that serve the country and that, are in the military. But I, found that, ultimately I kind of wanted to do my own thing and pursue entrepreneurship, along with him. And so that's just, so I absolutely love Austin, but, he had a massive impact on my decision to come out to Austin and decide to go to UT.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so you're a couple years into UT right now. You said you're an advertising major, and you've graduated.
Yes.
Was it MIS? Is that
MIS, yes.
Okay, in business school. Yep. Awesome. And so now from there, y'all are working together on something really cool. And it sounds like maybe the genesis of this a little bit was COVID, right? It sounded like that was maybe the time period. You guys want to kind of walk us through what you're working on now?
You can take it. I mean, you started on the content creation journey first.
For sure. So, he got into his own like personal consulting, and, he was doing deals for just various companies like in different states and all over. And so, I was seeing him do that. And over 2020, it was kind of funny because, that was right early on, like when TikTok came out, right? So everyone was starting to like get on the TikTok hype train. But at the time, it was before like people really took it seriously. It was the dancing app, as I like to call it. Because early on, it was like people, they didn't see the value. They didn't see like, okay, there's like actual like a market for businesses to like thrive on this platform. It's completely different now, the outlook and mindset people have on it then that they do now. But for me, I was, just kind of on the app, relatively early. And I was, playing around, doing some trends. Like I was like making a couple videos, just a lot of like random stuff. Yeah. But I had posted a video, I think in January 2020, that was actually my like decision video of like where I was going to go to school. So it was like me deciding between all the schools that I applied to, and they were all out of state. And ultimately I decided to I chose UT. Yeah. And the video got 800,000 views. I woke up with a couple thousand followers. And then from then on, didn't have like a super like consistent like regimen of like what I was posting, or like, okay, this is the type of content I want to make. But eventually, like, you start to realize that, like, once you get that first viral video, the second one comes way easier. And then you start to, like, realize that it's like, okay, like, how these algorithms and, like, how these social media platforms, like, really work. It's almost like a game, like, because there's certain things that, like, you need to do and have in your videos that can potentially, like, lead to that, like, virality factor. But so, essentially, over 2020, I took advantage of it and was able to, grow a following to now to just, near 1 million followers, right around, like, 900,000. And that's on my personal account. The venture that we've started is completely different from that. But I started to see the value. I started to see like, with, when you are able to build a following and build a community, it's like companies are willing to pay a lot of money for people that can create consistent and quality content for them that can help promote their brands, promote their products. And so I was beginning to do that, doing a lot of like affiliate marketing, for brands, but also trying to like grow my own personal brand and just learning a ton about the algorithm, like the importance of content creation in today's world.
Yeah. One thing I got to say about that, just to emphasize the impact of his decision to get into that, was when, over quarantine, maybe people, decide, let's, bear down and watch a bunch of movies, let's, play games and stuff like that. You had a bunch of time off, which is great, recoup, relax. Yeah. The one thing about him is he got to work. He, every single day, didn't miss a day. If we took like got out of the house during quarantine to go visit a relative or something like that, he wouldn't miss a day of filming 4 times a day, 3 to 4 times a day, chopping the videos up, posting them. Didn't matter what was going on. He'd be on a train or a plane or in the car on a road trip or something, and would be crafting videos nonstop. Didn't miss a day. And that consistency factor, maybe people would look at TikToks and be like, oh, that's not hard. First of all, it's a lot harder than you think. Right. It's 10 times harder trying to stay consistent and do it every single day. And one of his biggest things that he's taught me is you can't get discouraged on views. You can't get discouraged on views, and you just have to post every single day. You have to be involved with your platform, your community, and your account. And without his learning and dedication to that, we might not have started this next venture, and he might not have blown up on his own that led us there. So,
right. And so, and just to the point that he made, because this is one of the biggest things that I tell people that like try to like get into content creation, is it's like, don't get discouraged. starting out with like 0 followers, it's never going to be easy. Yeah. But I tell people like stay consistent and like don't pay attention to views, don't let it get to you, because eventually like something's going to hit. Yeah. Like if you post 10, 15 videos and they're not getting any traction, change it up. See like what you did and see how like it's the little things with a lot of these, apps. But I always tell people it's like if you really care about it, if you're passionate about it, just stay consistent, because like it's gonna happen.
Yeah. No, I've heard people, talk about content creation, like just doing it puts you in like a 1% category already, because so many people think about or have ideas, but then doing it consistently is like, now you're in rare territory. And it's cool to hear from somebody who's actually done it, because, probably lots of us watching are already addicted to TikTok, but a few of us have actually like are on the content creation side, and even a few are like have been successful with it. Yeah. So it's just so cool to hear. I loved even chatting offline. Your like intentionality with the algorithms and understanding how the app works and all of that is really fascinating.
For sure.
Random side note, then we get back to your story. I love watching the way you guys talk about each other. I think it's there anybody that's got a sibling. I've got a brother. It's cool. Like you guys you will stop to hype each other up, and I think it's just cool to watch. And
for sure. Well, I'm proud of him, man.
Yeah, 100%. I love watching y'all's relationship. It's a cool standard. Sometimes sibling rivalry and stuff gets in the way of that, and it's just cool watching the way that you guys connect. So
appreciate that. Yeah.
So now, like your personal learnings and ventures, that leads kind of to the company that you guys have started now and the project you're working on. So how would you guys describe or explain that?
Yeah, so pretty much late 2020, our family had fully moved to, we'd fully moved to Austin. Our parents moved to San Antonio, so we're not in DC anymore. We had a friend that, we always kind of kept in touch with from grade school, and he kind of contacted us, and we just were like, hey, we kind of have to do something together. Yeah. Just being from this area and having a like-minded appreciation for entrepreneurship and creating opportunities, we started Hard Knocks Call of Duty was really what it was. He approached us about doing an esports channel. And that's what we did. We started posting esports content, but quickly we kind of realized that that's not really where our passion lies. Like making an esports channel might be really good for the time being because it's a hot growing industry, but eventually we're just like, we don't really want to keep doing this every day. So we decided to switch to business, finance, entrepreneurship content. Yeah. Where when we started doing those videos, it was great. We really enjoyed it, but eventually we realized that not many people want to, learn about business and finance and all that sort of thing from young 20-year-old kids.
Sure.
They you got to have some credibility, you got to have some validity, and really attract people's attention through that. Yeah. And eventually we started experimenting with content. You could touch more on how important it is to experiment and how we got to that point. We started doing interviews.
Definitely. And so like he was saying, like we were creating all the content for, and we eventually changed it to the School of Hard Knocks, which was, again, like the finance entrepreneur media channel that we started running. And this was before any of the interviews. But eventually we had begun doing interviews with people, and we noticed that those started to do really well. And, we were interviewing people all over downtown Austin. We started to grow like pretty substantially and had some really cool people reach out to us, real estate brokerages, people that work pretty high up in tech startups and all these different like companies and different industries. And eventually, we just were growing and growing. We've grown the channel so far now to about 700,000 followers on TikTok, over 150,000 on Facebook, 100,000 on Instagram. And so
it's like a 1 year span, right?
Less than a year, because last, I want to say August or September, we had about 10,000 followers. And so since then we've, scaled up to almost 1 million followers in around like 8 to 10 months or something like that.
You talk about being consistent and stay with it, but that's not that long of a period of time at all. I mean, that's so impressive.
But that's the thing though, is like and again, I always stress this, is like the way that the algorithms are made these days. It's like you can post a video at night with 0 followers. You wake up, it's got 5 million views, and you're at 50,000 followers. So that's just how, there's a real gift out there for people to use right now, but it's just a matter of like whether people want to take advantage of it or not. And so, like you said, we've stayed consistent with it. We've connected with some really amazing people. We've done interviews with Mark Cuban, notably.
If you were to go back to when you were in either high school or college, what is the best piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Same thing I did. Just be a salesperson. Sell and learn all you can about business. And then from there, once you know how to sell, you can always start a business. You're an entrepreneur at heart. I would just go back and do the exact same thing I did. Realize that selling isn't about convincing, it's about helping. So when you understand what people need and what they want, and then put yourself in a position to help them, then you can make good things happen and you close deals, and that's how you create companies.
the CEO of Hot Dotty, the CEO of Silicon Labs, a chief marketing officer from T-Mobile, and all these, other really cool companies and in different industries. Ultimately, I'll let you kind of touch on kind of like the goal of like why we started doing this and like pursuing it from this angle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like 8 to 10 months is like, wow, that's a short period of time. But just to drive home the two things that I've learned from his content creation journey, you can't get discouraged and you have to post every day. And so our Instagram, was at 40 followers when we were at 200 posts.
Yeah.
And, that's a lot of posts to go with not seeing a lot of growth. And so anyone could really get discouraged, but we kept pressing forward. And now we're at over 100K at 1,500 posts.
Okay.
So
wow.
that's without that kind of just ignoring like, oh, this video didn't do well, and hey, we can't miss a day posting content.
Yeah.
That spike in growth would never have happened.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's some like evaluated content in there too. That's like an interesting lesson that I like. Like it wasn't just blindly doing it. We're also paying attention and having the humility to be like, what's work or what do we need to tweak or adjust, which is really cool too.
Absolutely. Those first couple, testing months, as I call them, were kind of working out the kinks of what videos can we really stick to and stuff. But we kind of, we're always blessed to have great mentors around us, whether it was through our dad in the military, we were in Boy Scouts, baseball, and just through, a lot of things that were instilled in us. But a lot of our peers didn't have that mentorship, and they didn't have people in different industries to be able to talk to, to know what to do. And in school, we just weren't really happy with the way that they were doing it as well. And so eventually we just kind of said, you know what, the mission of our channel here now, the School of Hard Knocks, is we really want to drive the value and information from people in different industries and be able to bring it to young people that don't have that access to real world information. People aren't really getting too much out of learning for an hour and a half in a lecture hall every day. They're constantly on TikTok getting short dopamine hits, scrolling through social media apps. And so if we could find a way to bring actual great value and advice to people when they're casually scrolling versus when they're, not really paying attention in class and they're tuned into their phone, then maybe we could change the world that way.
Wow. Wow. No, I love this. What would you say like the end game could look like for you guys? I know you don't know what that looks like yet, but as you're thinking about some of these next phases, what are some of the things you dream about, like where it's going, where you see your content going, how people are helped with it?
Yeah, I mean, so for Hard Knocks, for example, there's a lot of like, I'm not going to say garbage, but there's a lot of content people are consuming that may not like be of like value for them, where it's like we want to take something that can really provide value for people and that can really give people a different insight on things. And a really big thing too is like, our followers are not just based in Texas, or not just based in the US, but they're all around the world. We have people that reach out to us from all over the globe. We've had people from India, Australia, Ireland, all over, just tell us that, hey man, I was really struggling, but I received some insight from this content, like really appreciate it, like keep doing what you're doing. We've had someone tell us that they actually quit their job because of a piece of content that they found that like they really despised like what they were doing, and they ultimately like wanted to pursue their dreams and like work towards the goals that like mean a lot to them. So it's like seeing that like you're making an impact like in that instance, like that's when like what you're doing is great. But ultimately we want to find a way to take what we're doing and kind of like he was saying, in schools right now, whether it's high schools and college, there's a lot of discrepancies with the way, financial literacy is being taught. I mean, a lot of people go out into the real world not knowing how to find a job or not having the skills that they really need that are up to date in the industry that they're going into. So if we can take away to bring how we know how to deliver the content, but getting experts in sales or finance or, people that have had a lot of success in real estate or tech, and bring that and find a way to package it up and bring it to like school boards or school districts all around the country, either something like that or just going on demand and kind of building like a massive like media conglomerate. So
yeah, and not even just in like areas of like finance and entrepreneurship, because that's kind of one side of the market. There's some people that the corporate job is meant for them, that's where they're going to thrive and shine. Maybe they want to be a doctor, an engineer, so not everything has to be business oriented. If we could meet with some of the best experts and talk to them and package it in a course, or in a, not really a course, but a media platform, or take it to school boards and really say like, hey, we want to, provide this value in the way that your students are consuming content, then maybe we can actually make a shift and change and really tackle that demographic of 13 to 22 where it's like, hey, you got to really start thinking about your future and make sure before you even get to college, you know what you want to do and do for the rest of your life.
Wow.
So.
Wow, I see. This is just one of the things that I find so inspirational about you guys. You're 22 and 20, right? Is that the ages correct?
Yeah.
And, you know, looking at y'all and listening to you guys, like, it's not about likes and followers and getting famous or anything like that. You already have a heart. You are the next generation, and you already have a heart to help the next generation. And I think that's so cool that that's what all of this, like, testing, experimenting, consistency is about and driven by, is really helping people in their lives. I mean, I'm just, like, the emotional weight to hear, like, somebody made a different life decision because of the content. It's not like they're just sitting there numbed out. Like, they change something about the trajectory of their story because of what you're putting out there. Like, that's powerful stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, ultimately, you know, we've had a lot of great mentors in our lives and a lot of people that could guide us in the right direction. A lot of people don't have that. So it's like, if they're able to see a piece of our content that could potentially guide them in the right direction, it's like, you know, that's how, like, we know, like, we did the right thing, you know, in delivering that message.
Yeah. One quote that I think kind of resonates with this is, I actually heard it from Shaquille O'Neal in a video, but he was referencing Jeff Bezos. Basically says he makes his investment decisions based off of what companies are going to change people's lives. And so, you know, it's not about the likes, it's not about the comments, it's about the value that we can bring, finding, you know, advice or perspective from anybody out there that could bring, you know, one thing that we noticed, we actually had a guy who worked in private equity. He's probably around late 50s, 60 years old, who came up to us. We had interviewed him, and he came up to us on the street one day, and he stopped us, super high energy, was like, hey, great to see you guys. I just want to let you know, for the first time in my life, I got on social media, and I'm starting to make content now. He's late 50s, 60 years old, private equity, you know, finance guy, starting to make content because our channel was able to inspire him to realize, hey, you have a lot of expertise, you went through a long career, let's give some of that back to the younger generation. Let's, you know, they want to touch, and every single person out there, regardless of what industry or what your life story is, has some sort of perspective and value that they could give to anybody younger than them or even older than them. And it needs to be shared. That's kind of what we want to do here.
Like he was saying, I love the story about that guy, because he was saying that he had people that he hadn't seen in like 15 or 20 years that were like sending him the video and like reaching out to him. They thought it was like he thought it was the coolest thing, because he's like his kids were sending him it, and they're like, there's just no way that like dad went viral before I did or something like that. So that was really cool. And ultimately, you know, just to add on like to what he was saying about like everyone has perspective that can help benefit other people. And you know, again, this is something that I like to talk about too, about like traveling and experiencing different cultures, is that like, again, everyone has their own ideas, their own perspectives, because oftentimes like it is our differences that make us stronger. You know.
Yeah, I think maybe like one acknowledgement and then just one final question for you guys. My acknowledgement is, I think there's a lot about the way you guys are approaching what you do that is transferable to a lot of industries and a lot of ways in which people could be successful. Like, I just think about one, the humility. I keep coming back to that word, but just to like, you know, say, hey, we were putting content out there. People didn't want to listen to us as 20 somethings, and to be willing to pivot, like to, you know, see like, how are we really perceived? I think that like curiosity to do something about it. I think the consistency that y'all keep speaking to, like that is so transferable to so many things that people will bow out before they've really kind of gone through the grind and the learning and the growth and the opportunities. You know, a lot of this stuff feels transferable to a lot of areas, which is part of why I'm so grateful y'all are sharing your stories and insights with us.
Thank you.
And I think maybe, you know, just final question would be, usually the camera is flipped. Usually you guys are the ones doing the interviewing. And so you've been on the other side of a lot of helpful, inspirational content and so on. And so not to like put you on the spot too much, but is there anything that comes to the top of your mind, maybe that inspires you that you've heard or you think could be inspirational to people that are, you know, chasing a dream, trying to figure something out right now, their own story?
I got it.
Yeah.
Take the risk or lose the chance. And to me, I think people are presented with opportunities every day, and oftentimes people are very hesitant, or they're too scared to make the investment. They think it might be a setback. But at the end of the day, it's like you never know, like, unless you really try. And so ultimately with that is like just going out of your way to do things, getting out of your comfort zone. And I'd love to, again, take the risk or lose the chance, because when opportunities present themselves, you never know like if they will present themselves again. And it's like, it's up to you to take advantage of it, because you never know where they'll lead to. And another really good one is, you know, we talk about this one all the time, but it's the third door policy. You know, the front might be open, the back might be VIP, but find a way to get your foot in the door, find a way to like get in. Like only you can make it happen sometimes, but it's like where there's a will, there's a way, and like, you know, ultimately, like, you know, if you want it bad enough, then like you'll get it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one thing to touch on how we have all these things that we want to do is it's just you got to have your back against the wall. You got to face forward and realize that, like, hey, everything I've done up to this point doesn't matter unless I keep moving forward. Like I just, you know, face forward and what's on to the next goal. But ultimately, for me, what really drives me and what I do is that the realization that we have one life. We have one chance here on earth to make a difference, to do what we really want to do in life. I have to judge my decisions based off when it's me and I'm 80 years old and, you know, death's knocking on the door. I want to look back and say that, hey, at least I tried, at least I gave it my all. I was able to do this, and that, but I don't ever want to say, I wish I could have. I should have done. I should have told this. I should have talked to this person. I should have done this. I should have done that, and I didn't. I don't want to be that person. I want to be able to say, like, hey, I gave it my all at this thing called life, and, you know, I want to have the people around me to do it. Whether, you know, that's God, family, and great friends.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Well, and those don't seem like just emotional, motivational mantras for you guys. They seem like things you're actually living out, like you're doing that day to day. And so I think it's part of why you guys are so impressive. So where could somebody find you guys if they want to check out your content? What would you point them to so they can check out what you're doing?
Yeah, the School of Hard Knocks on all platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And then Instagram for me is Real James Dumoulin, TikTok, James Dumoulin, and then...
Yep. The School of Hard Knocks, like you said, you know, come follow us, send us a DM, you know, ask us any questions, and at Jack_Dumoulin for me on Instagram, and then TikTok is at Jack Dumoulin, straight. So.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, we really appreciate it. I know you guys are busy guys. Appreciate your time sitting down with us. Congrats on another semester.
Appreciate that.
And we're pumped for you guys. Really excited to see what y'all do.
Appreciate
Likewise.
that. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. It would mean the world if you would like and subscribe so that we can continue to bring stories of people all around Austin to you just like these. Be sure to check out our Story 512 channel as well for more conversations like this.